My golden brother hired a private investigator to expose me as a failure, but instead, he discovered my multi-million-dollar success. I grew up in a small, charming village alongside my two siblings. As the middle child, I've always felt somewhat caught in the middle, both literally and figuratively. In a place where everyone knows each other, this closeness can feel like both a blessing and a curse. My father is a hard-working man, but he rarely shows his emotions. He's now considering retirement. My mother, on the other hand, is his complete opposite, dedicated to running the household and deeply committed to the traditional values she was raised with. Both of my parents come from religious, traditional families. I love them dearly, but I've always felt like I couldn't quite meet their expectations. It's painful to sense that they see me as the family's disappointment. In stark contrast, my older brother is the family's golden boy. At 40, he's married to a reserved, quiet woman, and they have two sons who are passionate about sports, especially rough, physical ones. To be blunt, those kids can be a real handful. My brother seems to think it's his responsibility to mentor me, though his guidance feels more like a project he can't quite manage. He often treats me like someone who's perpetually in need of his assistance, expecting me to be grateful for the scraps of time he spares. He paints a picture of a perfect life, frequently boasting about his athletic children, his luxury vehicles, and his trophy wife. However, his so-called advice often feels more like bragging, which only deepens my sense of isolation. As a child, I was the sensitive one. I often cried at school, struggled to handle failures, and was excluded from most activities. My asthma made me feel even more alienated, and my parents dismissed it as a minor issue, compounding my sense of neglect. On top of that, I've battled depression for as long as I can remember. I wasn't athletic, tough, or particularly outgoing like my brother. Instead, I was the awkward kid who could never quite throw a football straight or sprint down the field. My parents frequently compared me to my brother, emphasizing how much more intelligent and sociable he was, which only deepened my insecurities. School wasn't much better. I barely managed a 2.5 GPA when I graduated from high school. After saving up some money, I enrolled in college but dropped out in my second year, causing a family uproar. My younger sister was considered the family princess. I don't know her as well because I left home when she was still a teenager. As an adult, she's not a bad person but can be overindulged, often mirroring the dismissive treatment my parents and brother direct toward me. She had a beautiful wedding at 19 and now has 3 kids. I find myself identifying most with her middle child, likely because I see a reflection of my own struggles in her. She gets teased frequently, and perhaps because her challenges resemble my own, I feel a deeper connection to her. After dropping out of college, I leaned into my nerdy side. I worked at a local comic book and video game store, which I genuinely loved, until it closed 7 years ago. Although I've moved on, my parents still act as if I'm stuck there. The highlight of my time at the store was meeting a fellow geek with big ambitions. Together, we co-founded a successful IT support company. When my business partner decided to sell the company, I received a buyout in the form of cash and stock options, which turned out to be very lucrative. Since then, I've launched side projects and made smart investments, many of which have been highly profitable. Today, I have assets worth over $1 million. I work as the CTO of a promising new startup, yet I live modestly. My 2-bedroom home is cozy but furnished with second-hand items, and I drive a 15-year-old Saturn. Despite my achievements, I still struggle with certain challenges, like managing my mental health, asthma, and drinking, which my parents don't take seriously. They dismiss it as purely mental, failing to recognize the complexity of my situation. My parents expect me to join them for Sunday dinners every week, even though they live on the other side of the state. The 2-hour round trip consumes much of my weekend. These dinners are draining, filled with unsolicited advice about settling down and lengthy discussions about my brother's latest sales triumphs. Though they've never outright called me a mooch, the implication is there. People back home still think I work at the now-closed comic book store, largely because my family undermines or misrepresents my achievements. Attempts to share my successes often get overshadowed by my brother's constant interruptions and self-aggrandizing. Correcting him feels pointless since it requires defending my career in front of people who might never value it. Last month, everything changed. My brother, in a misguided effort to expose my perceived failures, hired a private investigator to dig into my life. I suspect he was planning some kind of intervention with my parents. Instead, he uncovered the truth: my wealth, my career success, and my stable, humble lifestyle. The irony is that I work in security, so I quickly traced the unauthorized attempts to access my credit report back to the investigator. Infuriated, I decided to hire the same agency to look into my brother's finances. What they uncovered was shocking. He was living far beyond his means, with a pile of debts, 3 mortgages, and past issues with Child Protective Services, DUIs, and domestic disturbances. At the next family dinner, the dynamic was completely different. My parents began treating me with an odd reverence, while my brother became visibly agitated. When he tried to boast about his supposed achievements, I tactfully pointed out his financial troubles. This led to a dramatic confrontation that shattered the usual routine of our family gatherings. The argument spiraled into chaos, with old grievances and family tensions erupting in a way they never had before. Though I initially felt vindicated, I quickly realized the damage I had done, particularly to my brother's children, who were now exposed to his flaws in a way I hadn't intended. By the end of the evening, it was clear that my family's dynamics were irreparably altered. While I may have proven my worth, the cost of that validation was higher than I ever anticipated. No one had ever reached out to me or mentioned this issue before, which made me suspect they were improvising as they went along. However, I didn't question it. Instead, I reminded them of what they seemed to have forgotten: I wasn't working at the comic book shop anymore. I had already told them numerous times that the store had closed in 2011, yet they didn't seem to grasp it. The way they twisted our family history to fit their narrative shocked me. Feeling burdened and frustrated, I drove home. Right now, I feel torn. I can't shake the thought that they might pressure me to repay them now that they know about my financial situation. It feels like a betrayal. Watching how they treated my brother in a similar way makes me certain of what's coming. Still, I acknowledge that my parents did provide for my basic needs as a child: clothing, food, and shelter. Navigating this complicated mix of gratitude, resentment, and newly established boundaries will be a challenge. I'll likely need my therapist's help to process the shifts in our dynamics. It's clear that moving forward, setting firm boundaries will be critical. Growing up, I faced challenges because, to be honest, I was never the favorite child. My brother often mistreated me, and my parents did very little to intervene. Although they never physically hurt me, they acted as if nothing was wrong whenever my brother kicked, hit, or said horrible things to me. They completely ignored it. It's troubling that they didn't see verbal abuse as something real or harmful. Verbal abuse is terrible on its own, but it's even more painful when those meant to protect you turn a blind eye. For years, I've battled this, and I've had enough. Despite them being my family, I feel compelled to maintain a permanent distance. While I wish them well, I believe starting a new chapter without them would be better for me. If I meet someone special, like a girlfriend, and we decide to marry and have children, how will I handle these family issues? It could become very complicated, and I'm trying to figure it out. How do I introduce my new family to my old one if I'm not in contact with them? I have so many questions about what lies ahead. Before diving into the update, let me offer some advice. Your family didn't value you for who you are. If they only wanted you around to enhance their self-esteem or, worse, to take advantage of your success now that they're aware of it, they don't deserve your time. Your family doesn't define you. Based on everything you've shared, they're the problem, not you. You come across as a kind, hardworking person who endured a lot in a difficult family environment. Keep your phone aside and continue focusing on the life you've built. You've done an incredible job. Limit the time you spend with your family as much as you need to. They only care about your money, and you know it. Communicate with them in whatever way feels right for you, and lean on your therapist to help you embrace a life where they don't hold you back. Avoid unnecessary arguments if you can. Consider relocating to start fresh. You're not alone, many people face similar struggles with their families. When it comes to dating, explaining these family dynamics to a partner may be tough, especially if they have close family ties. But when the time is right, you'll create your own family. If you haven't done so already, put a security freeze on your credit accounts. If your brother used dealership resources to access your information, notify the appropriate authorities. The dealership won't want to be implicated if fraud was involved. Consult with a lawyer. Mishaps can happen, even if you're young. As your next of kin, your parents would currently inherit your assets by default. If you'd prefer someone else as your beneficiary, put it in writing immediately. Find a counselor you trust. In the months ahead, you might feel sadness about the distance from your family. Speaking with a professional will help you navigate this. When I left the family dinner argument, it felt like I'd just walked out of a war zone. On the quiet nighttime drive home, my thoughts were racing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew something had to change. If I didn't want to lose my mind, I had to stop hosting family dinners. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on work and my mental health. My gadgets and comic books, scattered throughout my house, became a comforting sanctuary. During this time, I increased my therapy sessions to work out how to create distance from my family without cutting ties completely. My therapist, Dr. Bennett, offered incredible support. His methods felt less like building a wall and more like constructing a fort to protect myself. As weeks passed and the weather grew warmer, I began thinking more about the future, especially relationships. After spending so much time alone and single, I started to believe I might meet someone special. Then, like something out of a comic book, Ava entered my life. After speaking with my divorce attorney about the situation, I felt a glimmer of hope. They reassured me that the courts take parental alienation very seriously, and there are legal steps to address this harmful behavior. I started documenting every interaction, every comment, every incident where the kid seemed distressed or confused by Daisy's words. I also arranged for Peach and Mario to see a counselor. I wanted them to have a safe space to process their feelings and understand that none of this was their fault. Their well-being became my priority, and I committed myself to being there for them, no matter how difficult things became. When I had the chance to spend uninterrupted time with Peach and Mario, I focused on creating positive memories. We played games, had movie nights, and went on small adventures. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of their old selves returning. Peach smiled more, and Mario started to ask about the things we used to do together. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, Daisy's attempts to paint me as the villain became more desperate, but I stayed calm. I leaned on my lawyer, my counselor, and my friends for support. Most importantly, I stayed consistent for my kids. The road ahead isn't easy, and there are still days when I feel the weight of everything. But I've learned to focus on what truly matters, creating a stable, loving environment for Peach and Mario. They deserve to grow up feeling safe, loved, and valued, no matter what. The takeaway. This experience has taught me that even in the most challenging circumstances, there's always a way forward. By setting boundaries, seeking help, and prioritizing what's important, it's possible to reclaim control of your life and create a brighter future. Closing message. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Seek support, stay strong, and remember that every step you take toward a healthier, happier life is worth it. If you found this story meaningful or inspiring, Please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to hear more real-life stories like this one. Together, we can learn, grow, and support each other. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.